Hi, I'm Stephen Feinberg, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Film and Television Office. Our guest tonight is a fantastic filmmaker. He's won an Academy Award for visual effects for Raiders of the Lost Ark. He designed Star Wars. He did Captain America as a director and many other films. And he's a friend I've known for, I hate to say it, probably 40 years now. Joe Johnston, welcome to Double Feature.
Thank you.
Joe, you grew up in, where, Austin, Texas?
I was born in Austin, but I moved, my family moved to Corpus Christi when I was 6.
Yeah.
So I really grew up in Corpus Christi, and then we moved from there to California when I was 14.
Oh, okay. So did you always,
I consider myself a native Californian, just so you know.
Okay. Did you always have an affinity for drawing and art?
I did. My father was an artist. He was a scenic artist for the live theater and television shows and stuff like that. And I always, I sort of gravitated toward art and, things like literature and music. I was no good at science or math, any of that stuff. I have a completely, that side of my brain is absent. So.
Well, that's kind of interesting because even though when you look at your artwork, it feels maybe, I don't know, the designs feel like there's some sense of science to your art. I mean, everything is, you've designed the Millennium Falcon and designed the Death Star and everything. It feels like a sense of technology.
I knew how to draw things or design things that looked like they work.
Okay.
That was the important thing. When I got out of school at Cal State Long Beach, I got a job at what at the time was a fairly prestigious industrial design studio where things actually had to work.
Oh.
And about 6 months later, I got this job at what wasn't even called Industrial Light and Magic. It was, I answered this ad I saw a flyer. We're looking for artists and designers and model builders for a space movie. And I got that job, and suddenly nothing had to work. It just looked like it did have to work. And that was such freedom.
And when was that, like 1976 or 75?
75, August 12th, 1975 is when I was hired.
Wow. And
I worked there for about 10 years.
Wow. And were you influenced at all by like films like 2001? Had you seen all those science fiction films?
I had seen a lot of science fiction films. The first film I ever saw, and I think I was probably 7 years old, was Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
I dated her.
Who didn't?
Right.
But it wasn't so much. I loved films, of course.
Right.
It wasn't so much science fiction. And later, it wasn't so much visual effects. A lot of people think that I'm a visual effects artist. I'm not. I'm a designer. My designs are used in visual effects films, but I'm not a visual effects person really at all. I still consider myself a designer.
So when you were going to college, to design, what was in your head? I know you got this opportunity for film, but what was in your head before that? What were you thinking would you design? Were you thinking you were going to design cars, or what was in your brain?
I was thinking I was going to get a job at a design firm, and where you design a variety of things. And I did. I got this job at a place called Chuck Pelly Design Works, which was a great place to work. But he was up in the Malibu Hills, and I was living in Long Beach, so I had a 90-minute commute, which was no fun.
Right.
The Volkswagen Bug that sometimes started and sometimes didn't. But while I was there, I designed, I think I designed a water softener. I designed some bus seating for Roar Industries. And I talked to one of the guys there who'd been working for Chuck for 10 or 12 years. And I looked at what he was doing. He was designing the clip that holds a ballpoint pen in your pocket.
Oh, wow.
And I'm looking over his shoulder thinking, is this what my future's going to be?
Right.
I can't imagine doing this. And I said, how long have you been working on this? He said, about 4 months.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
thinking, oh my God. So when the job for Star Wars came up, I jumped.
Had you ever heard about the Rhode Island School of Design? Was that ever an interest that you might have come to Rhode Island?
I had heard of the Rhode Island School of Design. In fact, a good friend of mine, Shelley Johnston, my cinematographer, his daughter went to RISD,
Yep.
and yeah, and so I'd heard of it, but I was at that point I was pretty much a California boy.
Right, right. So George Lucas, was he the one who put out all the I don't want to call them flyers, but maybe they were
John
to the
John Dykstra put them
oh,
out.
John did. Yep.
John Dykstra had gone through the industrial design program at Cal State Long Beach 2 years before I did.
Yep.
And he had gotten out and was already working in visual effects and had been hired by George. So uh, when John was looking for people to staff ILM with, he sent somebody down to Cal State Long Beach and had him put flyers up all over the windows and walls of the design department.
And so what did you do? You had to show your different designs and artwork to be, because what was there, like a dozen of you to start out?
There were you mean at ILM or from Cal State Long Beach?
Well, for ILM.
Yeah, I was the 11th person hired at Industrial Light and Magic, and I think there were three of us from Cal State Long Beach, but
How
the
old
other
were you?
guys,
Like 21, 22,
25.
25? Yeah.
Yeah, I was one of the older ones.
Yeah.
But um, so when he was looking for people to staff ILM with, he sent somebody down there, and what I found out later was I was the only person who applied for the job.
We-
I went back to Cal State Long Beach and I got Steve Gawley and Ira McNabb, who were in the design program. And I encouraged them to come up and bring their portfolios or whatever they had. But no one else applied for the job. So, of course, that's why I got it.
You're right, right, right. You were in the moment. I had Karen Allen here, and she was talking about her first gig was Animal House, and she was going to this actor's studio, and there was a flyer up about auditioning, and she was the only one that noticed it. Everyone else walked by. I said, "You were in the moment," and then she ended up, her career got launched that way.
Sure.
Did you then moved over to Marin County from where you were in Long Beach?
During the A New Hope, I moved from Long Beach to North Hollywood.
Oh, North Hollywood.
I had a 10-minute drive to work instead of an hour.
Okay.
So that was, and then after New Hope, George invited a lot of us, not everyone, but a lot of us to move to Marin County.
So New Hope was really the pre-ILM was in North Hollywood.
It was in Van Nuys.
Okay.
Yeah. And as soon as we finished A New Hope, that was right before the release date, a few weeks before release date, Glenn Larson, who was a TV producer, came in and he said, "I want all of you guys to move on to Battlestar Galactica."
Oh.
So he leased the building. He hired everyone, to do the designs and the visual effects for that show. And then I finished early because everything was designed, and I was the first one of that group to move to Marin County.
Wow. And what were your expectations moving? Did you know that there was going to be a trilogy of Star Wars? And did George tell you about some of his other dreams of other projects?
Not at the time. I mean, we knew there was going to be a trilogy after the success of Star Wars, because George had said, "I've got other films that are already written," or he had stories that were written. The scripts weren't written yet.
Right.
But the challenge was, after the success of Star Wars, we knew we had to do it one better. Mm-hmm. We had to improve on what we had done, and that was a challenge. And that continued to be the challenge for all the original trilogy films. After Empire, it was Return of the Jedi. which
Right.
had more shots and more complicated shots than either of the other two films.
Joe, where did you first see Star Wars on the big screen, like as a completed project? Like what theater were you in?
I actually saw it at Grauman's.
Oh, in Hollywood.
Yeah, we got some. I forget if somebody gave us, passes or something, but there were several crew members who were allowed to go in. We didn't have to wait in the lines that were around the block.
Yep.
They let us in the back door or something. But that's the first time I saw it.
Were you blown away when you saw how it looked with the audience reacting? Sold out
It was
crowd.
amazing. It really was amazing because we had never seen. We had seen an earlier. It wasn't a rough cut, but it was pretty much a finished cut. But it didn't have all the visual effects in it. It didn't have the final music
Yep.
or the final sound effects. It was very rough. But even so, we knew this was going to be something special. We just didn't know how special it was going to be.
It's unbelievable. And then with the John Williams score just taking it over to the top, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. As he did with all the Star Wars
Everything,
films.
everything, everything he's ever done.
Right.
It's kind of amazing that the group of guys and women and there's. Are you directing right now the second season of the documentary Light and Magic?
Yes, I am.
So the first one was, this is a documentary about ILM, the creation of the Industrial Light and Magic, the history. It was Lawrence Kasdan, right, who did season 1?
That's correct.
And now you're doing season 2. What is the season 2 focusing on?
Well, it's more the digital revolution, and a lot of it is the prequel trilogy.
Oh,
About
okay. Yep.
Everything that had been learned in the interim, and the fact that it was proven that you could do visual effects digitally. When Jurassic Park came out, I think that was one of the things that told George, okay, now I'm ready to do the prequels, and I have the technology available to do them the way I want to do them.
Yep.
It's a lot of that. It's sort of the digital revolution. It's the prequels. It's where ILM is going next, which is really exciting.
Can you share where ILM is going next?
Can I do what?
Can you share that with us, where it's going next?
Well, it's always going somewhere.
Right.
But it involves a lot of motion capture. It is, of course, everything is digital,
right,
from here on out. But you have to watch episode 3 of the second season, and I'll tell you all about it.
Oh, good. Is it are there going to just be 2 seasons, or will there be a third season as well?
It's hard to say at this point. We're the second season is taking ILM from the early 90s to the present day and beyond. So
Okay.
I don't know that there'll be material for a third season.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
So the original trilogy used a lot of model work, puppetry, and so much of that stuff stands the test of time. I had Doug Trumbull here one time, and we were talking about model work versus CGI and how that sometimes it's the models that actually stand up because there's, I guess, a physicality to them or a texture to them. And sometimes the CG doesn't stand up because our eyes are trained and they're educated in different ways, and we're always evolving. Do you find that as well?
I do. I think that the digital revolution allowed a filmmaker to put anything he or she wants on the screen, but that doesn't mean that they should. I mean, you can do anything, but the interesting thing with models and with something that you could hold in your hand, the tactile thing, is that you had to build it, and then you had to shoot it, and you had to have very creative people, of course, involved in the process of doing that. But with digital stuff, it's mostly the guy or the girl at the keyboard,
Right.
And so it's I think it's slightly less a collaborative effort. I mean, I'm not a digital person. I don't understand. I mean, what I'm doing right here is about as deep as I get into a computer.
Right, right,
But I think that it definitely changes the process in a huge way.
right. I remember as you were talking about like Jurassic Park, it was Phil Tippett was supposed to do the models for the,
Stop motion.
the stop motion, and then he became extinct. Right, was the word I think that was used. I don't know if it was Dennis Mirren or someone said, "You're now extinct. We're using the computer," which were
Yeah.
fantastic. But you also had Stan Winston's giant T-Rex.
Sure. Yeah. I mean that's a combination of things. Like you can't have an animatronic dinosaur walking across the field like you can with the digital one. So I think there's always a way to combine the different disciplines.
Right.
But any effect is just a tool to tell a story, and that's what we need to keep in mind. I don't like to go into a film and just get barraged with visual effects that are not really moving the story forward.
I'm the same way. I like characters that you care about and that you're grounded and hopefully sometimes you won't even notice that you have visual effects because they're so. Let me ask you this: what was it like working on, if not my favorite, one of my favorite films of all time, Raiders of the Lost Ark? What was that like? That experience, and when did you become a part of that show?
Well, when George wasn't doing a Star Wars film, we had an opportunity in between to do other things. I mean, and Raiders of the Lost Ark was a Lucas Spielberg production,
Right.
so George naturally wanted one of the guys to move on to that and at ILM. But my involvement with Raiders was all was the visual effects. It didn't involve any live action really. And there were some wonderful effects in Raiders,
Yep.
um, especially toward the end, the opening of the Ark
Yes.
sequence. We did break some new ground there, but it was the effects in Raiders. I think that they wanted to fit the kind of story that it was. In a way, they felt a little bit old-fashioned, purposely old-fashioned,
Yep.
because the story was taking place in 1936 or whatever it was. So I'm glad that we didn't have digital effects in 1981 when we did that show, because it would have. I think it would not have fit as well with the storytelling at the time.
The ending with the when the ghosts come out and it's the beautiful woman that turns into the skeleton face, was that all animated?
No, it was we had this actress that we made up, with white makeup, and we sort of built the shadows into her face and everything. We photographed her.
Yep.
I think it was in front of black, and then we did this optical transition from her face to the skull face, but it was all there. I don't believe there was any hand animation in there. The way we did the flying ghosts was with a puppet in a water tank.
Oh.
Trailing this material, some kind of like lacy, cloth material behind it, and we photographed that through the glass wall of a water tank.
So I remember that was that was something we hadn't seen before. That was very groundbreaking, and well, that's why you won the Academy Award for that.
I did get an Academy Award for that. I have to say that the show that we were up against, Dragon Slayer, developed a whole new visual effects process. They called it Go Motion.
Yes.
Where the animated puppet was moving while the shutter was open, and that gave you
the blur. The blur.
Blur.
Yeah.
It gave you blur. but Raiders, being the film it was, sort of swept the awards like a lot of films do.
Yeah.
And I always felt that for the visual effects, Dragon Slayer probably deserved the award.
Well, I'm sure the folks of Dragon Slayer would be very happy if you walked over to their home and gave them your award.
Uh, that was Dennis Muren.
Oh, okay.
Dennis Muren has 9 Academy Awards of his own. He doesn't need mine.
He's gonna let you keep yours. That's funny.
Yeah.
So, Joe, it was right around that time. Raiders was done. The Star Wars trilogy was done, the original, and then you were gonna go out and see the world, right? And then George Lucas said, "Hey, I want you to go to film school," and offered to pay for your tuition and keep you on a somewhat of a salary. And is that what sent you to USC Film School, where you and I met?
Oh yeah. After
Not
10
that you
years,
needed film school.
well, actually, you know what? Film school was. I was really glad I did go to film school because I I realized that I knew a lot of stuff. I just didn't have a context to put it into.
Yep.
And the great thing about film school is that you are forced to go out and make a film,
Yep.
which is one of the hardest things you can do. You know, you're doing 6 different jobs, you know, including craft service and
Yeah.
producing and directing and, you know, your wardrobe supervisor and all this stuff. If you didn't have to show your dailies on Monday morning, you just wouldn't get out of bed to do it.
Right.
It's really tough things. But yeah, George once said to me, this was before I was ready to leave ILM, but he said, you know, anyone can direct a film. And now after when he offered me the job offered me USC for 2 semesters, I realized that he wanted to send me to USC to prove that anyone could direct. But anyway,
No.
yes, he did. He was very generous.
Anyone can direct a film. Doesn't it can be bad. They can direct poorly.
Yeah, well, you know, a great crew can help a mediocre director
Right.
make a fairly decent film. It all depends on how willing you are to accept advice from people who know what they're doing. But
Right. Collaborating. Yep.
Exactly right. Exactly right. But I did make a 9-minute black and white film, which you may have seen.
Was that the one on the rocks with a character that was similar to a Rocketeer type of character?
No, well, no, he was a soldier.
So I remember it was on rock. Was it on some kind of like rock
Not in
formations?
the desert.
Huh? Desert. Was that the
We
Joshua
shot
Tree?
it out near
Huh?
Randsburg.
I remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, I took that 9-minute black and white film, and that was what essentially got me the job on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Oh.
Because
Was that your 310? Was that your 310
that was
film?
my 310.
Yeah.
Disney had fired a director, Stuart Gordon.
Yes, who directed a movie I did, Fortress.
Okay.
He had done Reanimator.
Reanimator.
Correct.
Yes. And they were frantic to hire a director, to find a director, and Tom Smith, who had been at ILM, who had run ILM,
Yes.
was now producing visual effects for Disney. And he said, get your reel and come down here and show Jeffrey Katzenberg. And I said, I don't have a reel. All I got is this 9-minute black and white film at USC, non-sync sound.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, we'll bring that. I met with them, and I had read the script, and I had a bunch of notes about the script that I thought could improve it. But I showed him this film, and I walked out of there. They were at a company retreat out in Palm Springs.
Yep.
So I left the meeting thinking, you know, maybe I can get my old job back at Chuck Pelly's. But I get a call a couple of days later, and Tom Smith says, they want you to do the movie. And so I went in to meet with Katzenberg again, and I said, first of all, you got to be kidding me. You're hiring me on the strength of this student film? And Jeffrey Katzenberg says, no, we didn't really understand the film. We just wanted to know that you knew where to put the camera.
There you go.
I said, okay.
So
It was.
you did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which was a tremendous success, right? That was a great success for you, and I think you did Rocketeer, you did Jumanji, you did. Can we jump into Captain America, which was I think really kind of launched all these Marvel films? What was that like?
It was one of the early films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but but it was actually a Paramount film.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was before Disney had bought Marvel.
Right.
In fact, I think it was the last Marvel film that was not a Disney picture. But there was an earlier draft of that that was the first half was took place in the 40s, and the second half was modern day. And I just said, if you're going to tell the origin story of Captain America, you're only going to get one chance to do that. So let's make it, bookends are okay. Present day bookends, that works, but let's let the story be about, the origin story taking place in the 40s. And Kevin Feige agreed with me on that.
Yeah.
And so we were able to convince Marvel, which at the time was still a comic book company.
Yeah.
And they looked at the films as advertising for the comic books.
Wow.
But they had a level of control that was sometimes difficult to get around. But
were you dealing with Stan Lee? Was Stan Lee the person who you were dealing with directly?
No, Stan Lee at that point was, basically retired, and he came in and did a cameo on all of the Marvel shows.
So he was more of a figurehead at this point.
Yeah, we didn't. He actually wasn't involved in the story or writing the script or anything like that.
Okay.
But we had a great time with him, coming in to play the general.
Right, right.
So we were able to convince Marvel to do the origin story, and I don't think I would have wanted to do the project otherwise.
Yeah.
I really was. For one thing, I love the period. I love the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
Just for the designs and the
costumes the choices you made had a roughness in a great way. It was I don't know. It was a masculine way of dealing with the look of Captain America. Because we've seen there were other versions of Captain America that just look goofy. You made him feel like cool.
That's my job, man.
No, you did. What about the casting of Chris Evans, and how did all that come about?
Well, Chris Evans had been in Fantastic Four.
Okay.
And I think that he did not have the best experience in that project, and it didn't do well. And he was very, very reluctant to sign on to another superhero movie.
Yep.
So we brought him into the art department. We showed him all the visuals. We talked him through the story. Kevin Feige sort of wined and dined him enough so he finally said yes. And I think he was the obvious choice. Now he had to sign a 9-picture deal.
Wow.
With Marvel that continued on when in the Disney years. And I think that I ran into him at a restaurant in Hollywood not that long ago, and I said, "How's it going?" He says, "I finally finished my 9-picture deal."
I'm 100 years old now. I'm 100 years old.
Well, they really crank those things out.
Yes. Now, have you had no desire at all to jump back into that world?
It would depend on the project.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who um, like Marvel movies, I hear that there's something unique about Captain America: The First Avenger. It was told in a different way, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's the origin story.
Yeah.
But it'd be tough. I mean, regardless of the genre, I'm just always looking for a story, a great story that I haven't told before.
Right.
That's the thing. I don't want to ever get sort of stuck into doing the same thing twice.
Right. Right.
I
Is,
mean, it took me a long time to sort of break out of the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids mold. In fact, it was October Sky
great
that
movie.
finally,
Right.
you know, got me out of the sort of the kids fantasy films.
Did
Yeah.
you ever want to do a Star Wars film, or is it like you were saying that you didn't want to go back and recreate the past, or
Well, it would depend on the story, but those films they seem to have gone a slightly different direction,
yeah.
than the original trilogy that I worked on. I'm not opposed to anything as long as it's got a great story and I've got the resources to tell it.
Yep. What about Joe? Just with your legacy, I mean, the creation of not just like the Star Destroyer and the X-wing, and then I remember you created the Rancor for Return of the Jedi, and Boba Fett and Yoda, and what's your how do you ever look back and say, my God, I had quite an impact on the world of cinema and touched people's lives. You ever like soak that in?
Well, I didn't do it alone. I had a lot of it was a teamwork uh, situation. And in fact, Phil Tippett designed the Rancor. I
Oh, okay.
can't take credit for that. He did it as a sculpture, as a
Oh, okay.
maquette. But there were I was never working in a vacuum.
Right.
Especially on the original trilogy where there were only like 50 of us who made those films.
Unbelievable.
Well, the first one especially,
Right.
The New Hope. And now there's at ILM there's thousands, 2,000, 3,000 people all over the globe, you know, doing those visual effects. But um, it was I see stickers on the back of cars, the Yoda silhouette and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It's sort of fun. I'm sort of glad they don't know who I am.
Do you ever watch any of like shows like Mandalorian or Boba Fett or Andor or
You know what? I have to say, I have to confess, I've never seen any of those.
really? Well,
Yeah.
you should watch Andor. I loved Andor, and
Okay, if you say so.
I know I say so, so you must do it. What
Okay.
about? We don't have a lot of time. What about? What was the experience of Wolfman? Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins. What was that? Trying to.
That was again, that was a 911 call I got. Uh, it was that show was about to be directed by a different director who, for whatever reason, dropped out about 3 weeks from start of principal photography. So
That
um,
was Universal Studios, right? That was a
that was
Universal.
Universal,
Yep.
and I came in. Most of my prep, my 3 weeks of prep, was making decisions
Hmm.
because a lot of decisions had not been made
Wow.
down to details like what kind of gun is this guy carrying, things like that. So that was my period of prep. But I had a great time on that show.
Was that filmed
Shot,
in England? Is that where you guys
yes,
were? England.
shot in the UK
Pinewood?
uh,
Elstree?
No, not L Street.
Pinewood?
Keep going. One more.
What was the other one? I know there's another one. I forget.
Exactly.
Right, the other one.
The other one, I can't believe I can't remember
I
it.
know,
But,
I can't either. I will. Sheridan.
Shepperton.
Shepperton.
Shot the whole thing at Shepperton and
Winner.
out in the English countryside.
Yeah.
And I had a fantastic time with those guys.
It looks great. It looked great. And Emily Blunt, right? Emily Blunt's in that too.
Emily Blunt. Emily Blunt was brilliant in that she knew how to match better than any actress I have ever seen, any actor I've ever worked with. She knew how, when he says that word, I'm holding the cup in my hand like this. And then when he finishes, I set it down and think. And I commented to her, I said, Emily, I've never seen anybody match this good. She says, when the editor is having problems, he's going to cut to me because I'm matching. I said, you're right. She said, I call that more EB time.
Right.
I said, okay, you got it.
Joe, when you're directing a film, do you like to rehearse actors beforehand, or do you prefer not to rehearse?
I don't particularly like to rehearse because, for one thing, there's not always a lot of time to rehearse.
Right.
These schedules are really down to the minute. But a lot of times, in my experience, when I have rehearsed, something will happen in a rehearsal, and you think, "Oh my God, that was great! Can you just remember what you did in rehearsal? Can you do that? It can't be repeated."
Yep.
So that's why a lot of directors say, "Well, we're going to rehearse on film."
Right. Right.
So you shoot the first couple of takes, as you work out the problems. But I don't like to go into lengthy rehearsal sessions because I don't know that you lose a freshness to it sometimes.
What about when you're blocking actors? Do you come in with a full-blooded plan, or do you try to give your actors opportunities for them to move and do things on their own without necessarily your direction?
Yeah, I come in with a shot list
Yep.
and a diagram of the scene.
Yep.
I don't necessarily have to stick to it, but the reason I do that is because if we start with a plan, we will, and then we fine tune it, it's going to be a lot easier for everyone, including the crew who's, watching the first. And I always do a master.
Yep.
If you shoot a master, you're telling the cast and the crew what the scene is going to be, whether you use it or not. And then from then on, you're moving into your coverage, but it just helps explain it to everyone.
Yeah. But what about the actors doing certain things or moving in and out? Do you say, hey, you're going to sit here, you're going to stand here, you're going to walk over here? Or do you try to allow your actors to organically come up and then you might sprinkle some other thoughts into their minds?
I like to give them freedom within the plan.
Okay.
But I like to design shots that that we can use, shots that move.
Yep.
And if you're going to do a shot that move, if you're doing a shot that where what's supposed to be happening in the scene, and then the actor decides, well, I think I will walk over here, that's going to screw everything up. So
right.
I sort of nail it down, and then within that framework, if they feel like I should pause here, I should turn to this person, I let them do whatever they feel like they need to do, and we'll work out if that causes adjustments to be made, we'll work that out. But I like to run a fairly tight ship without being a disciplinarian.
Right, right. You give them a certain amount of freedom, but you're still kind of controlling. What about lenses? Do you have particular lenses you like to use?
You know what? I have a wonderful cinematographer. His name is Shelley Johnston.
Yep.
And Shelley and I will walk through the scene, usually with stand-ins.
Yep.
And then he will decide what lenses he wants to use. And I can leave that entirely up to him.
Okay. I was seeing that, there's certain directors use particular lenses often, and I guess Kubrick ended up creating some of his own lenses for, that, and that he owned those lenses himself.
Right.
It's kind of
Right.
interesting. Well, what's next on the Joe Johnston film or TV front?
I'm going to pitch a project to Imagine Documentaries. I don't want to say what it is yet
Yep.
because I don't want them to know yet
Yeah.
because I want to spring it on them. But I'm working on a project that has come and gone for the last 5 or 6 years, and it went away because of COVID, and then it came back, but then it went away because the schedule wasn't right. So hopefully, and it's a science fiction based story,
Yep.
but hopefully that's gonna be coming up in the next 6 months or so.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your super busy schedule. I can't wait to see the second season of Light and Magic, and that's on Disney Plus, right?
It is on Disney Plus. Yes,
Yep.
it's 3 episodes.
Three
The first
episodes.
the first season was 6 episodes. This is 3 episodes.
Right, and I can't wait to see that because I love watching the season one, and I just want to thank you for your friendship and inspiring me and so many other people with your talent and being just a good guy. And I wish you the very best of health and happiness always, my friend.
Thank you, Steve. You're too kind.
All right, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
You better.
Okay, pal. Thank you so
All right.
much.
That you're very welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.